Okay, it's Sunday morning, and after kind of a wacky week, and what you see in the view there is my 1891 white VS2B, possibly to be renamed if Katie Farmer comes out with her book, to, I think, a VS3. And what I've been going through in the past week is kind of what a lot of people go through all the time anyway, which is what you want to do is just sit down and sew, and what ends up happening is that you either run into a machine issue or you you run into some kind of a delay. Like in my case, it was both a machine issue with the 6212C, and I had like three household things come up all of a sudden that, well, they changed my thinking about, what we're doing as far as coronavirus, because coronavirus has really changed. For example, all the workmen that were in the house or in the basement all had masks on. The guys that came into the house had already received their vaccines, both shots. So I guess they were deemed essential workers. And it just, it puts a whole different take on sewing. And even though, yes, I'm making face masks, you see the pattern there. Right now what I'm doing is I'm going to wind a bobbin on this 1891 white, because I'm going to end up finishing the quilt on this one, I think. I had already packed the 1588 away. So with all those different things, whoops, we might shift around a little bit here. All those different things that I've been thinking about this week and finding out, and this is difficult because bobbin winding is more difficult than sewing. As far as the treadling. And I don't have anything behind the treadle to keep it from shifting around. So anyway, I get to the point where I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to toss the 6212 in the trash. I'm not going to adjust it. I'm not going to put any more time into it. And yet, I go online, I say, I must need a new sewing machine, something that'll just do what I want it to do without me having to make a big deal about everything. And I know as soon as I look at them, they're all the same. They're all the same. They're all going to act up at some point. They're all going to not be perfect. I think we've gotten a little spoiled. Like right now I have to watch what this is doing. And yet, when you think about it, I have to take my mask off for a minute. When you think about it, the invention of the sewing machine and the fact that I don't have to do it by hand, I mean, how can you not appreciate that? So I'm finishing up a quilt, and I'm annoyed because I have to actually, pick out a machine and do the binding. But if I were doing that by hand, we'd be talking at least, couple of weeks to get it done, when with a machine we're talking about hours. So I myself am at the point where I have to stop and reassess my expectations from a sewing machine, because like I just said, the fact that they are enabling us to do to make items or to do things so much faster than we would be able to do by hand. We're pretty lucky to have them. A lot of third world countries don't have what America has. And here's another thing, I forget how this fits in. And we have to use them in order to benefit from them. You can't, I mean, in my opinion, a lot of people collect them. Some of mine might end up as just being like collectibles. But by using them, we actually ourselves are so much more productive, but we also keep depending on other things. We keep depending on other things, which is a good thing and not a bad thing. It's social interaction that starts with your tools. You know, I always, whenever I had a car repair needed, you can tell the type of mechanic you have for your car by how he keeps his tools. If they're thrown all over the garage, then he's, you know, maybe more like Picasso. And if they're neatly in place everywhere, then maybe you get an answer the first time. I mean, there are simple things like that with people taking care of their tools. And a lot of, not that one way is better than the other, if it gets the job done. And that's kind of what I'm saying. All week, I've had delay after delay, problem after problem, and all I needed to do was like 3 lines of stitching on a quilt, make about 6 face masks, and then start the binding on a quilt and start piecing my curtain panels. And it feels like I've had a month inside the week because I haven't been able to get anything done. So I go look at new sewing machines, or another 6212 or a 6012, or just a basic machine that does zigzag, reverse, maybe a few stitches, and yet I have the brother in the closet that will do all of that. So what I'm searching for in finding the right machine is, and I've kind of been known for this anyway, is the right tool. I'm looking for the right tool so that as I work, I'm doing it the way I want to do it. So yesterday, with the frustration over the 6212, I went to the White Family Rotary because that machine just will do it. And then because of the size of the quilt, I moved this white Treadle over here because it'll handle the weight and the size of the quilt. It's got an extension table on the back. So I'm acting kind of like Picasso, where I have to get more organized, and I keep thinking it's on one machine, when really it's in the function of sewing. So I'm not going too far off the deep end here, but you might think I'm going a little bit off. The lock stitch, first everybody used chain stitches, and that was in France, that's how they made their military uniforms. So it's not like those aren't good machines. Then the lock stitch was invented, And this machine, 1891 white VS2B with a bobbin that's a little bit annoying to wind sometimes, um, simply because of the friction and everything. But this makes a perfect lock stitch. White has this really easy stitch length selector. You just move the metal wheel. So when you get into the plastic and the 80s and the 90s and current, all of a sudden you're not sure how it's working. I'm not sure how it's working. You have to take them apart and figure out what it's doing. Most of these old ones, you can look underneath and see exactly what they're doing. Now this particular one only probably weighs 15 pounds at the most. I could drag it around with me. It's in a treadle. I can push the treadle around the house. So my level of stress reached like a breaking point yesterday when the 6212C started to act up. And a lot of people at that point would say, you know what, I'm not even going to bother sewing. And that's what today's video is about. And what I'm relearning again myself is that this is a simple machine. This is a simple machine. What I need to do is make stitches. They don't need to be zigzag or cams or designs or whatever. I need to make lock stitches. I need to use my legs because of my surgery. No matter how much money I spend on a machine, it's never going to get better than that. So I'm teaching myself this lesson today. This doesn't have reverse. So, gee, this is what that means. You actually just go backwards. It doesn't have zigzag. Well, I learned on my Dexter that on a handheld, if you want to go zigzag, you actually move the fabric. So let's try that. Look at that. I'm making a zigzag. There's zigzag. I think that with the pandemic and all the stress that we're under, and all of a sudden I have, over on the table there, I have a thing of elastic that is like 6 inches wide. I have no idea how many yards of elastic I bought. But it's huge. It's because we're going to need face masks, and we're going to need rags, and we're going to need, possibly, if shortages come back again, we're going to need to make our own toilet paper. We're going to need to make our own curtains, such as my neighbor across the street realized. The sewage pipe went in the basement, and the plumbers won't come out to work on it. So the guys from the landlord taped it, if you can believe it, because the plumbers won't work during coronavirus. So everything has changed, and I just want you to find your oldest machine today and use it. Don't hug it, name it, polish it, use it.